All right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. I'm here with Matty B today. Rick David couldn't make it, so I'm going to go ahead and just explain some stuff, give a rundown. He did send in a video, so we are going to start off with that. In his place, I was going to put in like some facts and stuff. I had been doing some type of agenda for each show, but I'll just be honest. I've been out and about pretty busy lately trying to find a new place for the show, like a dedicated space. I think I got one. Filled out a ton of paperwork. So I've been quite busy with that, but I'm hoping by next week I have some good news. I'll be able to get like a dedicated space set up for the show, and it will take a few more weeks to get everything moved and set up. But right now when I record the show, I do it on a temporary location, and I've been trying to get that ball rolling so that I can get that set up. So things are going good for that, and I think next week, hopefully everything goes smoothly this week, and I can get that set up, and I'll let everyone know either way. But with that, I've been quite busy, so keeping it simple again, have two topics, NFL, college football. In Rick's space, I did throw up updated recruiting rankings for 2018. Now for the audio people, I'll break them down and I'll be bringing it back up later. I basically did the top 10. If you go on any recruiting website, what they normally do is rank based on how many recruits you get. That's not a good indicator of overall talent. And that's where the SEC used to rank so high and get their preseason rankings inflated because they would oversign. Now everything's pretty much even. But what I did, I took the numbers that are given, I think it's from 24/7, and it should be the composite. I'm not sure how updated their site is because they recently acquired Scout, and Scout had their own rankings, so I'm not really sure. I think it went live in July. I'm not sure how recruiting rankings are going to be updated going forward. That's something to keep an eye on because there were three major players, Scout, Rivals, and CBS owns 24/7 Sports. 24/7 buys Scout. So now there really should only be two. I'd imagine they somehow roll in. But 24/7 had a composite of all three systems. And I believe that's where these numbers are coming from. Should be an average of all three different Scouts. So basically you're getting three people's perspectives on what someone should be ranked. And I'm really hoping that Scout doesn't go away just for that. Because the less sources you have, it's going to come down to pretty much someone's opinion. I think you're going to see a lot more busts and a lot more people undervalued based on their exposure. But I'm hoping, I'm not really sure. If I hear any news on that, I'll let everyone know. But I'm looking at the list right now. Basically, there are 10 teams, top 10 teams that have an average recruiting rate over 90, which I think it's out of 100 scale. So these teams are bringing in, they're the top 10. They're bringing in recruits that are rated above 90. That's on an average, which is going to go ahead and put you in the blue chip ratio that we talked about. It's going to go ahead and get you into that top 10 range to potentially win a national championship. One team, I'll just go down straight down. There's not really much separating these schools. Ohio State's number 1, Texas 2, Clemson 3, Miami 4, USC, Southern Cal 5, Alabama 6, Notre Dame 7, Penn State 8, Florida 9, and Michigan 10. There are a couple that are really close. I think Nebraska, Florida State, Stanford, I think were the three that might have came next. They were like 88, 89. So they're really close to that 90 rating. But just for space sakes, I only cut out the top 10, and it conveniently fit right in that 90 or above rating average for the roster coming in. And you can see I did leave on the number of recruits. So if you have a small class right now, Alabama, USC, and Clemson only have 11 recruits. On the overall ranking list, they're going to be much lower. Michigan has 13 compared to someone who's high on this, like Penn State has 23. They were number 1 for a while just because they had more recruits than everyone else. So I think the average gives you a better rating. I'll be hitting back on this on college football, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. If you're seeing, it's going to be on for the whole show. I don't have any other stats. Rick did send in a video. He's actually at the Penguins game tonight. I think they're playing the Sabres. So he's out there getting a little preseason. I'm going to go ahead and play his video now. He had a message for everyone. If it doesn't work, I apologize in advance, but I tested it. I just didn't test it on Periscope, so I'm hoping everyone can hear. But without further ado, here's Rick's message to everyone listening to the show.
What up, everyone? Going to the Pagua Ice Arena for the first preseason game for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year, defending Stanley Cup champions, who are going to face the Buffalo Sabres. So I just want to say what up to everyone. Sorry I'm going to miss the show. Sorry all the millions and millions of Wikimaniacs can't get to see me today. But got some things, so just wanted to tell you that. So trying to give you an update. Hopefully it's a good game. A lot of AHL guys are here, so do have some bigger stars. Jack Eichel, Vander Kane for the Sabres, and what will be Olli Maatta and Nettomini for the Penguins. So have fun, everyone. Watch a big show tonight. Bye.
All right. So Rick's actually going to the game. He was out getting autographs a little bit before. Here's an image of him. I think he was at the Penn State Hockey Arena. I'm not sure if that's actually where the Penguins are playing tonight or not. They might be. Looks like there's a good bit of Penguins in the crowd, but I think he was up there for autographs, so I'm hoping he'll be back on the show next week. So we'll be getting to hear back from him soon, but that's why he's out this week. Wanted to give everyone a little bit of message. But I've been talking the whole time, so we'll go ahead and kick into the NFL. Matt, you can kick it off. We'll go high tempo. Do you have any thing that you noticed? Actually, let's go high tempo first. Doesn't have to be NFL. Whatever you want to do. Go ahead.
I was actually surprised with the Boise State New Mexico game I think it was Thursday. Mm-hmm. Watching that game, they trained a dog after kickoff to go out and get the tee. I thought that was kind of a cool video. I saw that was out floating around of after the kickoffs were completed, they'd send this dog out and it'd come barreling out, grab the tee, and come running back to the sideline. So that was something pretty cool that they were doing out there, and I kind of like that.
I'll add on that. My high tempo for the week was basically the recruiting ratings, but I'll circle back around that later. Yeah, I've seen that they've done that with dogs. And if you're not familiar, if you don't watch football, on TV, they never show it. But a lot of colleges, even the NFL, what they had was a T-boy or like a ball boy. So it'd be a kid maybe like 10 to 12. I don't think they're much older than that. Their whole job would be, once the ball was kicked, they would have to run out on the field and grab the tee and get off. But you have large men out there barreling down the field. I'm not sure if NFL kind of changed the rules and it was like a staffer, but still, those guys are fast. If you watch anyone kick or return a kick, it's an amazing feat that no one's ever been run over. I think a dog's a much smarter move. They're smaller. I would hate to see a dog. Could you imagine if that dog got kicked or worse, got like trampled by a 200-pound man who, like, let's say it's like a squib kick, hits one of the guys in the front, the dog runs out, they can't catch it, and then there's a bunch of dudes just circling on him. You know that there would be tons of activists flipping out on that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I kind of thought that, but it was with the video that Boise had posted, they had a trainer that kind of like had him leashed up or her leashed up. And so it was like after the play was done, and I think like where tees years ago were a lot higher off the ground, anymore some of those tees that they're using are relatively flat, so they can just leave them out there on the field until the play is over with. And then as they have the stoppage in play, they send the dog out, it runs out, grabs a tee, comes back, and he did it so quick that you didn't even, unless you were really watching for it, you never even noticed that the dog was out there.
Yeah, and it's something that, I mean, in a blink of an eye, if you don't get off the field or something, or worse, like a dog, anything could happen. You think about, like, dogs are afraid of loud noises. What about a stadium like Oklahoma where they shoot off the guns? I think Boomer Sooner does something with that. Or maybe I'm thinking Oklahoma State with the Cowboy. Or just like anything, I know Penn State does that. And, Pitt. I know this is a throwback to Jeffrey because him and Rick were arguing all Saturday. Basically, my phone never stopped ringing about Pitt, Penn State the whole weekend. And they were arguing about the Panthers call or whatever is actually a Jaguar. And it's the same sound used by both teams, played at the stadium. which I don't know if there's truth to that, but that's what those two were saying. But imagine if there's a loud Jaguar sound blasting through the PA system while this dog's running out there. I mean, anything could spook them. And then you're chasing a dog around. You see those ones in baseball where it's like a squirrel on the field or a rabbit that somehow gets through like 30,000 people onto the field. It's funny, but it's definitely safer than having like a kid wandering around, because a lot of those high tempo offenses, you don't see them like stop. And if a kid's just wandering around or moving slow, I mean, he could be in the way. Refs are running up and down the sideline. That was one thing that I wanted to bring up. I can't remember if it was actually NFL or college, which game I was watching, but someone, actually it might have been a lower tier. It might have been that Memphis UCLA upset, because I think it was at a smaller stadium. I think it was at Memphis, but they get a game-winning or game-sealing interception or a turnover, or maybe it was just a turnover on downs. But their sideline immediately started jumping up, celebrating, and of course the ref threw a flag for excessive celebration. And to me, it was like they just won the game. Like, why wouldn't you let them celebrate on the sideline? It wasn't excessive. It wasn't like they were running out on the field. I saw that with, the USC-Texas game I'll talk about later. But I'm pretty sure that I saw it in the NFL where, I forget which game I was watching. I watched like 5 games this weekend. But it was like an interception, and a coach was running out onto the field. I think he was thinking about challenging a call, and I think he bumped the ref and they threw a flag on him for sideline interference, which to me is crazy, because a coach, if he's going to be doing something to affect the game, throw a flag, maybe call timeout. One of the ones was the Tennessee-Florida game. Another one where the announcer said something about, I'm surprised they didn't get him for running onto the field. But he was running onto the field to call a timeout because the ref wasn't stopping the play. And I'm pretty sure, I think it was Butch Jones. He came running down like the 20-yard line in the middle of the field. But at that point, if he wants a timeout and the ref's not listening, which is basically the ref's job, that sideline ref, what else is he supposed to do? Just take a penalty? I mean, that game, I think that was like, I don't know if it was I think it was setting up a field goal. And if he didn't get the timeout, it was going to be a delay of game. I could be wrong. That's what happens when you watch too much football. You see little things that annoy you. I write down little notes, and then I don't remember what games they're from. But those are some of the things that I've seen. Consistent penalties on the sideline. Excessive celebration. They're throwing penalties on coaches interfering whenever they're trying to actually participate in the game. I understand if it's like a normal run-of-the-mill play and the coach is like turned around, has it back to the field, and runs into the ref. Throw a flag. But if the guy's running out to make a challenge, or he thinks he's going to make a challenge, because sometimes you have the headset on and they're like, hey, we're taking a look on this, you might want to throw the flag. That coach has to get the flag ready, start to move towards the field, and then he has to wait for that final do it, or no, and then get back. And then but if he's in the middle of that, waiting for that final shout down into his headset, he's in no man's land. There's nothing he can do. What are your thoughts on that? Because you are a coach. What do you think of that, like sideline stuff?
Well, some of that is also game management and just knowing what situations you're in, and can you afford, I look at with some of these college programs, it's, do you have the timeouts available, and being able to kind of game plan ahead of time of how do you want to use your timeouts, or how do you plan on going for 2 or kicking extra points, and kind of having a plan going in of what you're planning on doing. So I think it shouldn't really affect all that much. To me, one of the things that I really look at that drive me crazy is on scoring plays, or especially with like first downs, you would think that there would be some kind of technology that using the football and the sideline markers, that they can get a better picture or better determination of where the ball is in certain situations. It always seems like with scoring plays and with first downs, it's like, did the ball go far enough for a first down? Did they cross that plane in time? And it's like, you would just think that the technology at this point would be so much better that they could use like something in the footballs or something, that the players could wear that would be able to indicate a much more accurate position of where they were at as far as spotting first downs and touchdowns. To me, that's one of the things that drives me crazy is it becomes so speculative of, well, did he get there or did he? And when people say that football is a game of inches, I mean, it really is. And sometimes the difference between, converting a first down or not can be a major turning point in a football game.
Well, that's something I brought up, and this might have actually predated the show after the Ohio State-Michigan game last year, where it looked like, based on the camera, that JT Barrett was short by about a half yard. But because the angle was behind him, they came out and did the dreaded call stands. It's not confirmed. They couldn't confirm that he got the first down, but because the angle was so bad, there was really nothing they could do. The call had to stay with what was ever on the field. And this actually came up. It's in my notes. I saw, again, against college and NFL, so we're not really on either right now, just general football talk. I saw like 5 calls that had to stand. One of them was a fumble. Or no, it was Aaron Rodgers on Sunday night, I'm pretty sure. He throws the ball. He's getting hit. And the ball comes out, and you can actually see the ball curves backwards. So his actual original motion had the ball going forward. But because he was hit and it was like a wobbly duck, in midair, the ball starts going backwards, basically lands. It could be either way. It looked like it was going forward. I don't know if it made it all the way back where it was like a lateral, but it was a fumble because on the field they couldn't call it. So they had to let the play run the course. And of course, Collinsworth, he's a big Aaron Rodgers lover. If you listen to him, he talks about him 100 times a day, even if the Packers aren't playing. He is going, well, it's a forward pass, it's a forward pass. And I'm just laughing because the refs come out and they can't overturn it because I couldn't even tell because the ball is curving backwards. So then you have to kind of like zoom in and see, all right, well, he was getting hit when he threw. So when did he actually release it? Was it a fumble even? Was his arm even coming forward? So they came out and just did the dreaded play call or play stands, which was picked up and then returned for a touchdown. So it was basically a 7-point swing when it definitely looked like his arm was going forward. They just didn't have the evidence because, again, that angle wasn't really down the sideline. And that was a play. So last year I brought up, and it might have just been when we were starting out on just Twitter. So if you haven't been following us, our Twitter's S-Bound Sports. Definitely get on there, subscribe to this show. We're on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, tune in a bunch of other ones. You can get the audio-only version. We put it out every week on Wednesday following the live show we do here on Periscope. But I want them to do a straight-down angle of the end zone. They toyed with the camera in the pylon. That doesn't work because the angle's too low. They need to have it in the stadium, and every stadium should be able to set this up. Give 2 cameras that only look straight down the goal line. So you could even have 4, one on each side, depending on where you're going. And then have a moving camera because they have that stupid Skycam that is worthless. What's the point of the Skycam besides like, okay, well, here's a little quick 2-second clip of the huddle before we break and go back to the normal view when the play starts? What's the point of that? They're paying someone to sit there and navigate the Skycam that they might use 20 seconds worth in between plays, or they do it weird, like for a kicker, which I understand the kicker, but still just have like one camera there or whatever. But still, that whole thing can float. That rig, if you've ever been to a stadium, the Skycam rig can go up and down the sidelines. And most of them even have a crane. I know at the University of Michigan in our student section, there's a crane that would sit, and that crane would move. There's no reason why that crane just couldn't sit and watch the goal line whenever it's not giving you the panning student section view. So if you've ever been to a game, they usually have a camera like the ESPN or whoever, Fox, is doing it. It's a camera that goes into the student section, and it's basically on a crane. That crane, whenever the game's going on, it just goes right back down where it's sitting, right in the end zone. Just line it up and have it running to show you that goal line view. Done. I mean, there are a lot of plays where it's like a weird view, but then you at least have that, and you can kind of see, and it's better than the pylon, because I saw like 2 or 3 touchdowns where the guy's diving, and again, they can't do anything on replay. They're not going to overturn it. There was one, I don't know if they would ever overturn it, but Mike Evans and Tampa Bay, he had a nice touchdown grab. It looked like his right foot might have came off the ground, but they didn't have the angle for it. I mean, it's just something that I saw a lot of plays. They're just not able to overturn them anymore. And I think they should have those cameras on the goal line and also put the moving sky cam should just watch down the first down marker. Watch down the first down marker. Those are basically the 3 points that are important in every play. Goal lines, first down marker. At least have 3 cameras. Every stadium can do it because they have 100 other camera views. Even high school can put that many cameras up. So it's something that I think they should do. It's a standard that every stadium can have. That way it doesn't matter what crew's in there. Fox, CBS, ABC, whoever else does games, NBC. If the stadium has the cameras there set up, put some rig. I know most football stadiums have like a little cave there where they have the TV broadcasts. Just move that down. Renovate it. It's not that big of a deal. Off topic, because I wanted to mention it. I've been posting a lot of Georgia stuff. Georgia invaded Notre Dame Stadium. But if you want to know how easy it is to make that renovation, to put that camera there in the end zone instead of I think it's at the 20 or 30 yard line, most stadiums, one on each side. Just move it down to the end zone. Cameras are good enough anyway. You're going to get the same angle. It doesn't matter. You can still watch the end zone then. But Notre Dame actually widened their seats. It cut their stadium, I think, capacity down to 78,000 or 79,000. They finally widened their seats. I don't know if you saw that, Matt. I didn't even see it. I didn't see them publicize it. It only came out after the Georgia. They estimated that there was only 15,000 or 20,000 Georgia fans at that stadium. That stadium was red. Almost completely red. It was ridiculous how many Georgia fans were in South Bend. And that's what they were like, well, the number makes sense because we actually widened our seats. So now we don't hold over 80,000, which is well overdue. I mean, a lot of those seats, if you've ever been to a game, cram city. And I mean, it's been talked about. If you go to Penn State, there's a number every 6 inches, it feels like. You see guys, they take up 3 spots. And then you're if you're standing, I've seen someone complain. Of course, it was East Carolina and Virginia Tech. Someone complained that at the beginning of the game, the guy in front of him was standing up. I was like, what are you complaining about? He's standing up cheering. East Carolina's been getting killed every game. You should be dying to have fans that are willing to stand up and try to egg the team on, not complaining on them on Twitter. And I saw East Carolina's athletic department or Pirate Club or whoever responded, we're going to look into the matter. Embarrassing. I know you're paying tickets to a game, but you're going to stand up. And a lot of times they're not even seats that work. Go to a Penn State game and try to make everyone sit in a row. It's not going to work. You're going to have to stand. Unless they're widening seats like Notre Dame that I don't know about. But that went off base. What do you think about putting the cameras at the end zone and the first down? I know there might be some logistics, but at least that gives a baseline of what everything is required. And then everyone knows going forward.
Well, I think that wouldn't be bad. I think the one thing that you kind of missed a little bit is I'm wondering if it's some kind of agreement that the NFL and NCAA have as far as the scouting services and things like that they don't want to use that over the top camera, because sometimes you can really get a good view of the offensive linemen's blocking techniques and how they're using different assignments. And not only that, but if you use that wider angle, you can get all 22 film, which the all 22 cuts are very rare. If you watch any of the Sunday broadcasts or the Saturday broadcasts, a lot of times you get you'll get most of the players, but sometimes the safeties will get cut out, or there'll be other alignments so that you don't really get to see pre-snap exactly how everyone aligns. And then as plays are developing, unless they go back and show you replays, it's tough to see exactly what routes are being run by the player. So if you're sitting at home trying to map out what kind of plays your team runs, you really can't get an really accurate view of that unless you somehow have gained access to all 22 cut film.
That's a good point, and that's why it's good that we have a coach here on the show, because I didn't even think of that. To put it in layman terms, what all 22 means is by having that sky cam behind the play, you can actually see all 22 players on the field. And maybe the NFL uses that broadcast and gives it to the teams. And that's a good point. I didn't think about that. So in return, they're basically paying those broadcasting companies, Fox, CBS, everybody, to give them that camera view, but then that film only goes to the teams to review, and it's not actually used for broadcast except for like I said, kickoffs. Maybe they use it on field goals, and then maybe they show the huddle. Sometimes if it's like a wildcat, they'll show it on replay or like a nice run. But that's a good idea. And yeah, I don't know what the logistics would be then for having 2 sky cams. I don't think it's possible. So that would be the toughest one to get, to figure out some way to show the first down marker straight down the first down marker line, because it moves so much. The end zones are okay. Like I said, you can build that into the stadium. You can't build in a clove every yard. That doesn't make sense. And you can't go ahead and put it on the stadium wall because players stand the whole time. So if you go to a game, you try to buy like the very low seats, you might not be able to see some of the action if there's so many people lined up. You kind of need to stand up in those lower seats, so you can't even have a camera gliding back and forth there. So in that case, I don't know. I don't know what the option would be, and you're probably right. They do probably pay for that full cut to kind of see, just because coaches want to see who ran what route, who missed a block, and it's easier to see that if you see every player, and that's probably the only camera that's going to get you that. But you have any other final thoughts before we go into the NFL talk this week?
No, let's get after it.
All right. Going into the NFL, I'll start with the Steelers. I'll be honest, I wasn't threatened at all in that game. That was one of the more relaxing games I've watched in quite a while. It didn't have the ending like the Browns where you're kind of like, are they going to make a comeback or not? The Steelers were clearly the better team, which surprised me. I know the Vikings have quarterback troubles, but I thought for sure that they would give a better game to Pittsburgh than what they did. Le'Veon Bell, much better this week. I actually was very impressed with his performance. He's definitely up to game speed. And I'll go back. I said it in preseason. I really wish, and I honestly think most players only need one preseason game. And it would be cool to kind of see, Coach Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, Michigan's coach, started to do a podcast with his dad called Attack Every Day, I think, with enthusiasm to mankind, or whatever his saying is. I definitely recommend checking that out. But I did hear, and I didn't know this, but when his dad coached at Western Kentucky, they actually played a team from Russia because they were in trouble losing their team at Western Kentucky. They didn't have the funding. And the NFL has been trying to get NFL Europe going for so long. Why not do something similar? Play a foreign team. The story that he told on their podcast, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Search for the Harbaugh's podcast. Definitely football based. They go through, he breaks down every Michigan game. It's better to hear it from the coach directly on what went well and what didn't, and then get some fun stories, some fun football stories. But he basically said that they invited this Russian team into Western Kentucky, gave him room and board, and he said that there was one guy who was so fast that he offered him a scholarship after the game, and he didn't take it because he wasn't interested in football after seeing what America had to offer or whatever. But that's just another thing where if the NFL wants exposure, play a team. I don't know if NFL Europe even still exists, but anything's going to be better than the current 4 preseason games that don't mean anything, only get players hurt. And Le'Veon Bell proved it. You really only need one game to get caught up if you're in shape. Now, if you're out of shape, that's on you as a player, and that's going to hurt your prospects down the line trying to get a contract. But I think that the Steelers game was one that I watched, and as a Steelers fan, it was very, very easy to watch, laid back. I liked a lot of things that they were doing. The Vikings offense definitely didn't scare them, so they were kind of vanilla in a lot of their packages, it looked like. And the defense really controlled the game, and I wasn't really concerned. So that was a good game. I watched the Falcons and Packers. I thought the Falcons were going to blow them out. Then I was really worried that it was going to be another Super Bowl where they were going to blow it. But the Packers kind of got back into it, but not really. That one was very similar to the NFC Championship game, which makes me think that the Falcons are looking like another Super Bowl team. They could make that vaunted back-to-back Super Bowl appearance, or worst case scenario, it's looking like they're going to win the South. The Panthers have been surprisingly good, but they've only played the Browns and the 49ers. I think I saw a stat where they're the only team that allowed or held defenses to like so many points, 10 points, since the 2006 Ravens, something like that. So it's been a while that there's been a defense that good. But again, they played the Bills and the 49ers. So, I mean, that's a scheduling Super Bowl right there. Like, they win. You know, and you get those two teams to start off your season, you can work on a lot of things early on because they're not going to actually push you. So, the Saints have looked awful in that division. I honestly think it's going to be Falcons. Carolina's looking like they could nab that wild card spot. The Bucs looked good. That division might be like one of the ones that you watch. I'm not sure if they're going to get both teams. It's actually going to come down to that Carolina-Tampa Bay game now that I think about it. Tampa Bay actually only played one game. They played who? The Bears? I watched that game.
Destroyed them.
Yeah, and the Bears, man, their quarterbacking situation, I have no words. So they draft Trubisky. Of course they're not playing him. They're playing Mike Glennon. I didn't even know Mike Glennon was still in the league. He's an old NC State quarterback from I don't even know how many years ago. But he's popping up. He looked awful. The Bears couldn't get anything going. I don't even know if they have any weapons. Alshon Jeffrey went to the Eagles over the offseason. So, I mean, the Bears are just like a lost cause. And it has to hurt them watching the Packers be consistently good or at least decent every year. The Seahawks are another one I have in my notes. This is mostly NFC first. Seahawks, man. I don't know. Whenever you're only scoring 9 points on the 49ers or whatever it was, I think it was 9-6. I actually don't have the score written down. But that game, the 49ers are not good.
12-9.
12-9. A 3-point win, which all field goals, right? That's what I thought was going to happen to the Michigan game over the weekend. But, I mean, all field goals against the 49ers when the Panthers basically did whatever they wanted to them that first week. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that division. I thought the Cardinals have looked pretty bad too. They struggled with the Colts. I think that's who they struggled with going into the AFC. The Colts are done. That South division. I mean, the Titans look kind of good, but I don't know. We're going to have to get some more game film. Raiders look decent. Again, they looked pretty good overall. The Rams, I thought were going to be better, just staying out west. The Broncos are one team that I have here that impressed me because they took it to the Cowboys. I don't know if that's kind of like the elevation thing. I think that game was in Denver.
So it was, but, you know, this is something else that I was thinking about with that game. How much is the Ezekiel Elliott suspension causing distractions within that Cowboys team? Because basically they're going on a week-by-week basis now of, are they going to have Zeke or is he going to be on suspension? So how much of that is now starting to factor into game planning and things like that for the team?
And it's something that I don't know. Whenever you have that many distractions, remember, there was a couple other guys that were arrested, and one of them kicked off the team. I think, we talked about it on the show. It was one of their wide receivers. It was like a mistaken identity, and he was kicked off the team. So you have a couple different things going on. You need a good locker room, especially whenever the Cowboys have such a young core group of skill players. They have to be on the same page. They just have to be. And whenever you don't have that, I don't know. But I'll let you go in here. What are your thoughts around the league? Was there anything that stood out to you?
Well, first off, I thought it was interesting. One of the big storylines was Adrian Peterson's reactions to not really being the main ball carrier in New Orleans. And when they signed him, I thought this is going to be a really good situation for him because he doesn't have to be, you know, the bell cow ball carrier and carrying the load himself, because it seemed like when he was in Minnesota and they were trying to force feed him 30 carries a game, he ended up with groin injuries and ankle injuries and all kinds of stuff that kept him sidelined to begin with. So it was like, okay, well, I can see you going there. It doesn't really seem like a scheme that would fit his particular skill set, but maybe as a change of pace back, a third down guy, you know, short yardage, he might be a nice complement to Mark Ingram and some of the other guys that they have. And he went and was pretty vocal this week about not getting carries and how he didn't sign up to be a change of pace back. Well, it seemed pretty evident from the get-go that Sean Payton wasn't willing to just settle on one running back. He was going to do a multi-back set, which, is one of the things that looking at some of these teams that, I know we talked about this before, that had handcuff running back situations. And I wonder how much of that is now starting to surface during these games, because through 2 weeks of the NFL season, I feel like the games have been very sloppy. There have been a lot of blowouts. There's been a lot of struggles with moving the ball. I don't know if it's just because it's the early season, but there's some games, you mentioned already about the Seahawks-Niners game and how that was a field goal fest. And there were some of the other ones that, Bills-Panthers was 9-3. Like, for as much as they're trying to accommodate offenses and allow these wide open, no huddle, up-tempo teams, you would think that they would be scoring a lot more points, and it's very disappointing to see how the pendulum has swung. And when I look at that, I think what you end up seeing is the NFL is not willing to make drastic changes. Like, that's why the college game that we were talking about last week is so much fun, because you have like your service academies that run the triple option in Georgia Tech. You have, your wide open spread offenses like Mike Leach is doing at Washington State. You have your traditional I schemes like at Alabama and Florida State. You have like so many different varieties of offense that I think, depending on what style and type of football, there's something for you. When you get to the NFL, a lot of it is basic, single back, 2x2, 3x1 formations, and everyone's running the same thing. So even, you look at like Joe Hayden, he's able to be released by the Browns, signed by Pittsburgh, and he's up to game speed, already has the entire playbook down and is playing in week 1. Under most circumstances where you're looking at these really thick playbooks, 150 plays and checks and audibles and different things, it would take a player a couple weeks to acclimate to that system, had it not be that it's so copycat that everyone's running the same stuff, that I'm wondering, is it becoming too same old same, that since everyone's doing it, you're just seeing a vanilla product being put out right now?
That's something that, and I know I can circle back a couple different ways, touching on the preseason. Yeah, preseason is basically meaningless, like you said. These games are sloppy. It's going to take a few weeks for things to kind of even out, and the rosters need to be settled because people are going to go ahead and change. And that's what made me laugh a few years ago. I guess, well, it might be even a decade now, thinking back how old it was, when they were saying that the Patriots were stealing plays or whatever from practice. Every team basically runs the same sets. If you watch NFL Countdown, whenever they have on like the retired players like Randy Moss, Chris Carter, going back to like their time, Chris Carter's time, they used the same exact play calls, basically the same exact formations, the same hot routes, everything. It's been consistent over time. They try to throw in a little bit of some of the college innovations. Maybe they, instead of running the ball 60 times and passing the ball 40 times, they kind of invert that, but it's still the same exact sets. The still same exact couple offenses. I think maybe the last great innovation was, you have the run pass option, but even that came into the league, and it's not something that's very high prioritized overall in offense. I think the last big one that really took over was the West Coast offense in like the 1990s or late 80s. It's been that long since something's actually took over and become the predominant offense for a number of teams. And with that type of dinosaur mentality, yeah, you're going to go ahead and have teams running the same exact stuff. And it kind of benefits you because if someone gets hurt, you're like, okay, I can pick up so-and-so off the practice squad. I can pick it up from someone else's team. I look at the Cardinals. They cut Chris Johnson. He's right back in practice. He's ready to go. Running back, they need him. They picked him right back up. I saw he was available. I think he got maybe 4 carries. Maybe he didn't get any. I can't remember. But he was definitely on the roster. They definitely got him. And yeah, okay, well, we're going to cut you, and hopefully no one else picks you up. You can kind of go into retirement. But if something happens, like, oh, David Johnson needs surgery, we'll welcome you back with open arms. We know you know the stuff. We didn't change it from last year. We didn't change it at all. Just come right back in. We'll put you right back in your spot. And it's something that...
Jay Cutler.
Yeah, Jay Cutler. And that's
he was
something too.
set to broadcast at CBS, and now he steps in, and the Dolphins beat the Chargers in their first game, 19-17. How do you walk off the street, step into to the offense, and ready to go?
He never played there either, right? So it was like a totally.
The head coach was his offensive coordinator his last year at the Bears. So when Gase went to Miami, they're, again, lather, rinse, repeat. It's similar concepts. And you were saying about the RPOs, one of the things that a really good video to watch is Brett Favre's quarterback camp with John Gruden. And he talks about how he started kind of doing them at practice just out of boredom of running the same run plays and practicing like faking different throws to see if he can get guys to move. And eventually it got to where he thought it was something that he could do in a game. And he's like, well, if you try to approach one of these NFL coaches about it, they're going to shoot it down and say, no, we're going to do it the way that it's always been done and follow these different, West Coast or Perkins Earhart system that we've always run. And we're going to just do it the way it's drawn up. Well, he pulls it out and just, throws a slant that shouldn't have been, and they start looking at him, well, wow, this might be something we can actually do if he executes it in a game and says, well, I saw it, and has the justification for it.
Well, that's a good point. When you said about Gruden's quarterback camp, and even some of those hot routes and stuff, the run pass option, those existed back in the 90s. They were just called audibles because they weren't actually in the shotgun. So they still had the same run pass option. He would just let everyone know at the line. I don't know if you caught it. And go ahead out there, everyone, search Tony Romo calls plays from the booth. He's sitting there in the booth, and he's like, they're running to the left right now. Oh, he went, never mind, he audibled black. Now they're doing this. And so, he knows, and it was the Raiders game. He never played for the Raiders. He's going to sit there and be able to call their plays just because he said, and the guy's like, how do you know what they've been running this whole game? He's like, I played in the NFL for 12 years. Nothing's changed. If you play in the NFL, you know everyone's schemes. They recycle coaches. I mean, how do you think someone can just get offensive coordinator from some other team? And it's kind of similar for some of the colleges. Like I look at Florida, they're having offensive woes. They hired Doug Nussmeier. He washed out at Alabama. He washed out at Michigan. What made them Florida think that he was going to be able to come in and do some innovative offense there? It's not going to happen. You keep recycling the same guys, you're going to be doing the same old stuff. And the NFL is the same exact way. John Fox he's cycling through the league. And is he Super Bowl caliber? He's at least NFC, AFC championship caliber. He's won a couple of those. I don't think he actually won the Super Bowl. He's been there a few times. But is he going to be good enough? I think about, who's the other one? Jeff Fisher? It seemed like he was coaching in the league forever. Another one that he was good enough to get you there. And that's it. I know I joked about Andy Reid. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? He's one that he'll get you to the playoffs. If that's what it's going to take to get tickets sold and fans merchandise sold, and just stay relevant, stay in the playoffs, Andy Reid will get it done for you. And there are a number of teams that will go ahead, buy into his scheme. I think, is he a West Coast offense type guy? I think he might be.
Absolutely.
He's one of those holdovers from that era when the Packers ran it with Brett Favre, the 49ers ran it, the Eagles ran it, everyone ran it. The run pass, which is the RPO for non-football people, run pass option is whenever the quarterback's in shotgun. That's what they're calling it. Instead of audible, and he basically fakes it to the running back at the play, and then he either hands it to him or he pulls out and then runs the pass play. So they're basically just like the audible back in the day. They're still calling 2 or 3 plays in the huddle. Now he just has the option on the go instead of having to let everyone know before the plays ran. So it makes it a little bit harder on the defense. It really took off in college. I know Oregon was really good with it when Chip Kelly was there. I think it might even started before him. Cam Newton won a national championship with it at Auburn. And yeah, it's kind of gone through. And they went through, it wasn't like a flash in the pan like the Wildcat, where some teams ran that because their quarterbacks were awful and they had 2 stacked running backs. But I don't know. It just seems like everyone runs the same stuff. You don't need the preseason. The preseason doesn't do anything because the NFL games are still sloppy. And one more point, I'll let you go back in. My big thing that I saw, I actually dropped Matt out. I'll see if I can get him back up here in a second. But let's see, I'll call him. But I'll say it right now, the celebration thing they added back in. The NFL all offseason talked about their celebrations. They're back. Everyone can come in and they can celebrate. And it didn't really do anything. So you go ahead and you get called in to watch these games, and it's like a 10-second celebration. They're very strict. I read through some of the rule books on it, and they talked about, okay, well, you can do this type of celebration. You can do that type of celebration. And it's not like organic like it used to be 10 years ago. I definitely think they missed the boat on it. It's something that I think they could have went ahead and did a little bit better. They should have eased it back in. I think they made a press release in April or May. They went ahead and they announced that they were going to go ahead and they were going to go ahead and they were going to allow people to do their celebrations on the field. And whenever they did that, they made a big point about it, but they, you back, Cuz?
Yeah, I'm on here.
All right. I'm just talking about the NFL celebration rule. So they went ahead, they made a press release saying they're allowing celebrations. And then I think they made a list of like, oh, you can do these many celebrations. You couldn't go ahead and do stuff crazy because that's not the line they're trying to tote here. So now this year I have to sit and watch a game. It just made the game longer because now our wide receiver makes a catch. He can do a 10-second dance. That's like the only thing they allowed was dancing. I think I saw one penalty on one, but I can't remember what it was. Was it a kick? Was it a kickball or something? I can't remember. Maybe someone else can just tweet at me and see. But they gave us a set of rules, and they're like, we're going to add celebrations back in the league. But they didn't really add them back. And it didn't add anything. It made the game more annoying because now everyone's just dancing. After every play, you're down by 30. I think that's where we saw it the most. I was watching the game with some family on Sunday, and the Bears were down by like 30. Tackle, 10-second dance. And then you have to watch it, and I'm looking at like the Bucks. The score is like 20-something to nothing or whatever it was, and Bears players are just putting on these dances that are clearly choreographed because of the new NFL rules. It doesn't add anything to the game, and it's like they're out of touch. They're trying to get excitement back, and it's just not working. And I dropped out Matt again, so not really sure what's going on with Skype here. We'll go ahead, and I'll try to get him back on. Not sure onto the show, but I'll keep going here, get off the celebration thing, and we'll kick back into a little bit of college football now because we're running late. NFL went way longer than I thought it was going to. And with college football, I watch a ton of college football. The first one that I watched the game that Matt mentioned earlier, was at New Mexico and Boise State. Now, that was another situation where they have coaches that came and they were in the league for a while and they kind of floated around. Matt, I'm talking college football now. With the game that you mentioned was at New Mexico and Boise State, where they had a coach that was recycled. Who was their coach? I think you messaged me about it or tweeted about it.
Bob Davie. He was Notre Dame's coach for a while and ran some option. And the cool thing that he's doing right now is he kind of revamped it and put it out of the gun. So now it's one of the things that's making New Mexico more prominent now on the national stage. They've been to bowl games the last 2 or 3 years, and part of that's because of him kind of resurfacing. He did some work at ESPN, and then it seems like for these coaches that get fired, it's a way for them to back into the league. They can go to ESPN or they do broadcasting for a year or two, and the dust kind of settles on why they got fired in the first place, and then they make their way back to another college program.
Well, that's something that I wanted to kind of use as a segue, and I apologize for the Skype errors. I don't know what's going on, so hopefully it didn't seem like a confused ramble for the last 5 minutes. But one of the points that I wanted to make was you look at a guy like UCLA's coach. They suffered that loss to Memphis. They have, now I'm blanking on the name. Jeff Mora Jr. Is that his name? Jim Mora Jr. So they hire, again, an NFL guy, just like Bob Davie's recycling. They're using the same schemes that I'm pretty sure his dad did. I know Jim Mora was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, and I don't know if he head coached maybe for the Falcons. I'm not sure on the stats there, but that's another one where he's bringing the NFL concepts down to the college level, but they're kind of like outdated. So you see where he has an offense that's prolific. He has guys that are ready to be drafted, but they just don't have the consistency, and it doesn't really work. You can't do a one-to-one NFL offense in college. It just doesn't work that way. Nick Saban tried to do the college offense in the NFL. It didn't work. And there's been a couple, we've talked about them before on the show, Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll. I think most of the ways it goes college to pro, that jump seems to be a little bit more successful one, because when you bring the NFL schemes down to college, you're not expecting the recruiting. You're not expecting a bunch of other things. And a couple guys, I think, was it Dennis Erickson? He jumped around and was semi-successful. You're seeing it with Jim Harbaugh. He started in college, went up, and then came back down. That seems to be something that you can be successful at. Coach Steve Spurrier did something similar. He was decent. I don't know if he was quite good with the Redskins, but he was great at Florida, decent there. And then he came back to South Carolina and was also awesome, and has the most wins at the University of Florida and the University of South Carolina whenever he retires. So you can learn a little bit. Go ahead.
Looking at Harbaugh and going from college to the pros and then back down, with a lot of the changes that are going on in the NFL, do you foresee a situation where Harbaugh would leave Michigan to maybe coach the Colts and be reunited with Andrew Luck?
Well, I mentioned that before. A lot of people said Harbaugh was only good in college because of Andrew Luck, but Andrew Luck was a 4-star recruit. He wasn't like some recruit that everyone wanted. I mean, he went to Stanford. So it wasn't like he was getting pushed to go to USC. He wasn't getting pushed to go to Alabama. Harbaugh coached him up. He coached quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he coached for the Raiders. We brought that up before. So he coached in the NFL. He brought those schemes down to him, and then he was able to learn. I think the NFL guys were really bitter with the way it went. I don't know. I could see him going back to the NFL. I don't think he would leave Michigan high and dry. I think there would be a contingency plan where he might handpick his successor, or he works with the athletic department. I don't think he liked the way that the 49ers basically pushed him out. I mean, you can go back through and read the reports. Everything that the 49ers organization pushed out turned out to pretty much be a lie, that nobody wanted him. He had tons of NFL offers, so that was a lie. Why would he fire him in the middle of the season? And then he was saying that Harbaugh was quitting or whatever. That was a lie. Basically everything he did made it so easy for Michigan just to claim him. The timing of his firing gave Harbaugh time to scout the bowl game, come see, while other NFL teams kind of had to wait. They had to wait their turn because their season was still going on. Michigan was done that year. I think, was the Hoke year 5-7 his last year? So there was no bowl game. Michigan was ready just to recruit him. Come see our roster. Come see our stadium. And it worked out perfectly, much to the 49er. I mean, they hated it. And a lot of owners, you see that they're reaching out. And his brother has great success. I mean, his brother doesn't speak about it. I know Jim still does a bunch of college stuff, and I know that they talk to his brother. A lot of the Ravens guys, like I know they've drafted a couple Michigan guys. I just don't see him jumping back in. I know a lot of NFL, especially analysts, because it was kind of like the insiders were saying that, oh no, Jim's about to take this position. And I was a student that year at Michigan. I was at the game. Actually, me and Jeff, we might have mentioned it early on the show before we did video, but we were in the student section and we started a Hire Harbaugh chant, which was picked up by the broadcast team. I think that game was done by ABC, and ESPN reported it, that the student section had loud chants of Fire Hoke. I was there. I started the chant myself. It was me, Jeff, and some other kid we just met. Started a Hire Harbaugh chant. I think it was the Minnesota game. I have a video, or actually it might be the pinned tweet on my Twitter. If you go to Richie Leahy on Twitter, it shows me and Jeff in the stands of Michigan. We started a Hire Harbaugh chant right there. We were getting killed by Minnesota, and ESPN and everyone reported it that we started a chant for Fire Hoke. And I was mad about it because we were much more specific. We wanted Harbaugh, and someone turned to me and was like, which one? I said, I'll take either at this point. But I had a feeling, and talking to some people, some different boosters and some other students, because I was a graduate student, you talk to some of the older crowd, they were saying, hey, don't worry, I think we're in on Jim. because he was already fielding offers at that time. So I was still a student, so I wasn't like I was talking to big boosters or whatever. But there were definitely feelings that he was going to come there no matter what, because he was tired of kind of the backstabbing. And maybe he could speak on it. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But as a student perspective, they were giving tickets away. If you went and bought like Coke from the vending machine or something, you had a chance to win 2 free tickets. The only reason Jeff came with me was because I was a student season ticket holder. They gave us extra tickets for the games you could purchase. So I asked Jeff, I said, hey, they're selling the extra student tickets at Michigan. Think about it. How often did Michigan have to sell student tickets? So we knew if Hoke was fired before the season even started, there was no way they were going to let that happen. You could never bring him back whenever you have to sell or give away basically student tickets because they didn't sell. There's no way. It might not have been Harbaugh, but it just lined up perfectly because of the 49ers. And because of that, and Michigan kind of soft recruited him there, I just don't see him like shunning the alma mater. I think he loves it there. Based on everything he says, I listen to his podcast he does every week. He's kind of free to do his own thing. The NFL guys are really pushing it. They're trying to like build any connection to these teams. I know he quarterbacked with the Colts. He was 1 throw away. I think it was kind of like a Hail Mary situation against the Steelers from going to the Super Bowl. And when was the Neil O'Donnell year? 95? Was that the 94 season? I'm not sure what. I think it might have been the 95 season. I can't remember.
In 95. The 95 Super Bowl was god-awful.
So if you go back, watch on YouTube, Harbaugh throws a Hail Mary. It looks like it hits the Colts player right in the gut. He just can't pull it in. Steelers go to the Super Bowl. Of course, Neil O'Donnell throws a bunch of interceptions. We lose anyway. But I don't think he's going to jump back. That's my perspective. In a few years, could I see him? Yeah. Does he have to win a national championship for him to be content? I don't know. If he wins the Big Ten a couple years, like maybe he wins the Big Ten 2 out of the next 4 years, maybe he jumps back. I mean, he seems happy here, but I think he's going to build a foundation just like he did at Stanford, which now looks like maybe down the line Stanford's showing some cracks. They just lost to San Diego State. So
yep.
The Pac-12, I'll circle back into that, but I'll end with that. I think Harbaugh, he likes what he's doing. He likes showing kids the NFL, and he's still young. He's only 50-something. There are coaches in the league like that are in their 70s. So could he go back to the pros? I definitely foresee it. I mean, maybe he does end his career at Michigan. As a fan, you can't be mad at him for anything. Not his fault he left the 49ers. There's a lot of bad blood out there. And if you look at the media reports, no one's really saying that stuff anymore about he's hard to work with, he's hard to do this, because he's really not. He seems like a great guy. All the kids love him. Former pros love him. They're all coming back. I mean, he just had Adam Schefter he was a captain. Rick Eisen was a captain from the NFL Network. Whenever you're bringing those NFL Network guys back into the program, I mean, they're going to stop writing those slanderous things about him. I know the NFL owners can go ahead and tell them to write stuff, but whatever on that. And I think he'll be fine. The game last week, I thought it was going to be all field goals just because I still think, I mentioned it last week, I think he's holding back the offensive playbook. I didn't feel like, just like the Steelers game. I know the Michigan game was like 9-6 at halftime or something. I didn't feel threatened at all in that game because it was kind of like they were moving the ball and controlling the clock. Air Force had a lot of yards, but they were squeezing them and they weren't getting anywhere near the end zone. And even later in the game, whenever they did, I mean, they scored on a nice pass. Well, we scored on a punt return, so it wasn't really, like I said, after the punt return, I thought, oh, we won the game. That's all we needed to do was one touchdown, no matter how it came. And I think the big test is Purdue. And if you're not familiar with the XFL, me and Matt used to watch the XFL all the time. Purdue's coach, Jeff Brom, was in the XFL. 1 week, he got hit so hard, his helmet was on sideways. I'm pretty sure his nose was sticking through the ear hole. So look this up. It's like Jeff Brom XFL video. He leaves the game on a stretcher. He's completely knocked out on a big hit. And he comes back the following week and he's dressed. And they ask him something, and I'm going to paraphrase this. I could be wrong, but they ask him. They were like, last week we would be like, we're so surprised we see you dressed. Last week you left on a stretcher. What are you doing here? He's like, I'll ask you 2 things. He's like, this is the XFL. And then he's like, yeah, it is. And he's like, do I have a pulse? And he's like, yeah, I do. So let's play some football. So a guy with that much love for the game that gets completely knocked out scares me. I'm a little bit nervous because Purdue looks pretty good. They just crushed Missouri, and I know Missouri has their own problems. Not going to talk about them here, but you can look those up with enrollment and all kind of other stuff. But they held their own against Louisville. Louisville looked bad, though, this week against Clemson. So maybe it's a thing where Purdue and Louisville kind of on the same level where they're not quite great teams that should be ranked, but they're decent enough to get to a bowl game. And I think that's where Purdue's at. So I expect Michigan to win that one. But looking at Purdue's schedule, Purdue might be a sleeper team in the Big Ten just because the West is so weak. Nebraska, they have to fire Mike Riley. They have to. You can't lose to Northern Illinois. They basically paid them almost $1 million to come in there and get their asses beat. And Northern Illinois didn't even score on offense. They scored on defense. So it looks like I lost Matt again. We'll try to call him one more time. I know the show's already going long. But I wanted to get his thoughts on some of this recruiting stuff because Florida State's just right out. I'll tell him to try one more time, and we'll end it. But the college football overall, I don't know if I see a top team right now. I think Clemson might be a clear number one for me. Clemson's been the most impressive. Alabama got out to a slow start against Colorado. Pitt looked awful, which makes me think Penn State might be a little bit overrated. A lot of these are going to shake out. If you follow us on Twitter, S-Bound Sports, I've been putting together some basic, just some stat stuff, some analytic stuff I've done every week so far, where I give a list of each undefeated team by conference, which I think the Big Ten and the SEC both have 7 left. And just looking at playoffs and BCS games and national championships, the best chance you have as a team or a conference to get in is by having an undefeated team. So I go ahead and I tweet that out. So don't tell me, well, they'll go down as they play each other. Well, right now the Big 12 is already down to 4 teams. What are the chances of one of those 4 going undefeated? Oklahoma State looked really good. Oklahoma's looked really good. They're potentially going to have to play each other twice because there's a Big 12 championship game this year. So if there's some type of 3 round robin where each team wins with TCU, the Big 12 could eliminate themselves from the playoffs, and that Ohio State game won't even matter. So I put that out there. The other one I look at is record against other Power 5 conferences. Now, I will say, I do it a little bit different than some of the other big ones do, like ESPN and Fox Sports or whoever put out, because they add Notre Dame, and they add the Air Force and Army and Navy military academies, and they are not Power 5 teams. I'm sorry. You can't count that Michigan win against Air Force as Power 5 because they're not. They're in the Mountain West. You can't add Ohio State's win against Army as Power 5. You can't. Just because the SEC as a conference came together and said, well, we're going to add the military academies or whoever, and BYU is Power 5. They're not. Wisconsin did not play a Power 5 team this season. Did they look like they could be beaten? I don't know. They didn't play anyone yet. So I'm putting those out there. I think right now the Pac-12 only played. The Pac-12 has 12 teams, I think, I think they're at 12. I don't think they're up to 14 yet. 12 teams. They have played 8 Power 5 conference teams in the first 3 weeks of the season. And they've looked pretty bad overall. Their top teams have. USC almost lost to Texas at home. Give me a break. USC is not going to go undefeated. If they do, I'll gladly eat crow on the show, but I mean, you don't barely beat a Texas team that lost by 10 to Maryland. Texas lost to Maryland by 10 at home, and USC's at home, and they have to go to double overtime. Give me a break. But the Pac-12, they have the best record. They're 6-2. They've only played 8 Power 5 teams, and one of those is Rutgers, and one of those was an awful Nebraska team. It looks like. Who else are they playing? So the Big Ten's next, I think. They are 7-5. They actually played the most. The 2 conferences that have played the most are the Big Ten and the ACC. Each played 12. And as a fan, I think it should be every team has to play at least 1, and I would like to see that grow to 2 in the future. I know Michigan has schedules. I talked to Matt about it over like last weekend or over the weekend. Michigan has Virginia Tech and Washington 1 year or 2 years, and the next couple years they have Notre Dame, and I think they're trying to get Notre Dame back in Oklahoma or something, which is crazy. But that's what I want to see college football go to. They already have a 9-game conference schedule, Every conference needs to do that. I don't care if Florida State and Clemson and whoever else, I think Georgia Tech voted it down because if they play non-conference games with Georgia, whatever, every year. Michigan used to play Notre Dame every year. Michigan didn't back out of that. Notre Dame did. And now look at Notre Dame. They kind of need that boost. So they're asking Michigan back onto the schedule. Like, okay, well, now we realize that playing Wake and Boston College every year isn't that good for our schedule. So we need you guys to come back on. And so Michigan's like, nah, not every year. So I think we're going to have next year and the year after that. But I'm looking at the Power 5 schedule. Follow us on Twitter. See what that is. I also threw up, again, the recruiting stuff here. Looking at the average rating. We're looking at the best talented rosters. More 4- and 5-star guys than 3-star recruits. Some surprises on this list. Miami. I wanted to ask you about that, Matt. Mark Richt looks like he's going to be able to recruit Miami back to where they used to be. Does that worry you as a Florida State fan?
Well, I told you way back when they signed him that I was pissed that Miami went and got him because he's a good coach. There was no reason why Georgia ran him off to begin with. And I think that it's just a matter of time until he pulls it. He was pulling recruits at Georgia. He's going to be able to do that back in Miami. I didn't realize he was a Miami grad. I knew he was the offensive coordinator during Florida State's early years, run with Charlie Ward, and was the offensive coordinator when they really started to put their fast break offense. They're the original no huddle that they adapted from Buffalo and Tampa and Cincinnati with Sam Weiss. They adapted it from there. So, I mean, he was there on the ground level installing that stuff. So I think he's going to use similar concepts. It's not like he's forgot how to coach. I think it's just a matter of kind of getting through all the issues that Miami has. And I think Miami's going to be a tough team to play in the next couple of years.
Well, I'm just looking at this, I'll give some final thoughts, and then since we're going a little bit long, I know we had some tech issues. But looking at this list, the ACC has definitely got a bump with Miami and Clemson now. And one other team that I'm looking at that surprises me is Florida's also on the list. So you have McElwain, who's been slammed for doing poor recruiting. Finally, right now, I know it's early. They're on the list. And Penn State looks like they're going to build off that Big Ten championship success, and they're on the list. They're ahead of Michigan, which would be the first time, I think, under the Franklin regime that he's actually out-recruited, or he's one of the top 2 in the Big Ten. Michigan right now, looking at their schedule, we have 3 teams that we're going to play that this year it looks like they're going to out-recruit us, and I know it's a weird cycle. I think we have less scholarships, but Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State are all ahead of us on this list. And Florida State's in the same boat, Matt. They have Clemson now, Miami, and Florida that if this holds could out-recruit them. And I don't know what the scholarship limit is. But looking at the overall, I know we talked about it before. If you look at the top 10 composite for 2017, I'll see if I can bring it up here while you talk. But what do you think about Florida State's recruiting competition now when it's more of a flooded Florida?
Well, there was the potential for that to happen, but I think right now there's no need to panic as far as these recruiting rankings go, because remember, you're dealing with 17, 18-year-old kids, and I think some of these rankings are a bit inflated because of early signing periods, and just kids that commit early, you're going to get a bump. But as the tide flows, as different teams are offering scholarships to players, and you start to see some things adjusting, I think it starts to settle a little bit around Christmas with the kids that are going to graduate early and possibly early enroll. They're going to want to make that decision sooner. And then you have that second wave of kids during National Signing Day that I think you kind of get a better view of what that looks like when that National Signing Day rolls around in what is it, March or April, that they have that they're able to sign.
Whenever
that's
they
when
start, yeah.
Whenever they you have that time period, that's where you're really going to see where have people landed, because right now it's early in the process. So a lot of these kids are committing, and then as the season changes, as teams lose, they may lose interest. Getting on campus and getting to see games, their feelings may change as to what that home stadium atmosphere is like. That if you pick up a late scholarship offer, some of these kids may not have, an Ohio State, a Florida State, a Michigan, a Miami scholarship, but to then later in the year, as they're not getting a particular recruit they want, to offer someone else and have a domino effect, it could change, the way a couple positions fall. And I think it's not anything to stress about for one cycle. If it's something that builds over maybe 2 or 3, you put yourself in jeopardy if you haven't been recruiting well in the past. So it's looking at how are you doing as a whole. And for a team like Florida State that's really been doing above average over the last couple of years, if this recruiting class were to fall off, it wouldn't necessarily mean the end of the world, because they had a really great class last signing period. And with the younger people that they have in place, they're still set for the next couple of years, but they better make sure that they're continuing to develop talent.
Yeah, and I'll build on that. I actually just sent a tweet out from S-Bound Sports, so if you follow us there, where it's the actual roster composite for this season. Right now, Florida State's 5th overall, the number 1 in the ACC and on their schedule, because Florida's not in the top 10. So only 1 year, one recruiting cycle isn't going to go ahead and push Clemson and Miami up over Florida State. Clemson right now has the 9th best roster. They have a surprisingly high amount of 5 stars. I don't know if that's going to push them closer to Florida State next year or not. If this holds, the one team that I said, like Penn State's finally out recruiting Michigan, I think they've already dropped a couple recruits since season started. They were the number 1 team overall. They've fallen down to 8th. Penn State right now for this season has the 19th best roster. Miami is all the way down to 20. So even if Penn State lands number 1 or Miami lands number 1 and Florida State and Michigan hang around 10, they're not going to jump those schools. So it's whatever the 4-year composite's going to be. Maybe when these guys are seniors, but you're always going to see a lot of attrition. It's going to be, is coaching consistency there, and what happens after that? The one thing that surprises me with Notre Dame, there's a lot of smoke there for Brian Kelly because of the way he handled some of his press conferences after that Georgia game. If he goes, I don't see Notre Dame staying in the top 10. And those are Midwest recruits, so that could go ahead and bump up some of these other schools, and especially some surprise schools like I talked about Jeff Brom. He looks like he's building a good program in Purdue, and something I didn't think I would ever say ever since Joe Tiller left. I've never seen Purdue have this much excitement, but if Notre Dame loses a couple guys, they're also a national program the way they recruit. So a couple of those recruits they lose might be from Florida. They might be from Texas. They might be from California. And the last point I'll make on this, and I'll go ahead and end my points for the week, Oklahoma's not on here in the top 10. I don't even think they were in the top 15. I could be wrong. I have to send out the whole list to everyone on Twitter. But Oklahoma, with Lincoln Riley, they have to recruit. That's been their problem. They made it to the playoffs, 2 years ago, but they didn't have the roster, and they got ran out of the building. Now they look like they hung with Ohio State this year. They have a deep roster, but if Lincoln Riley doesn't backfill that, he might have 1 year success and then start to fall. You've seen it happen with Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M. You come in, have a good roster to build on. You have to go ahead and get the talent, get the recruits to backfill that. That's my last point for the week. Matt, do you have any closing thoughts on the show this week?
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about when we were talking about some of those RPOs, one of the things that really have changed the way that people look at offenses now are those RPOs. And basically what, for the people who really aren't following it closely, Nick Saban was one to really challenge it, because what happens is a lot of times they're calling a running play, and at the last minute the quarterback's deciding to throw the ball quick on the perimeter. So the officials are being put in a really tough place of, are they going to enforce the rule of not allowing offensive linemen down the field? So the offensive linemen they call whatever play, and it's just automatically built in that the receivers are running certain routes on that play, that the linemen don't know that it's a pass, so they're just firing off and running downfield. So I think that's one of the things that's really been unique over the last couple of years that's been different from maybe years past where the quarterbacks would audible at the line. You're kind of seeing more now where it's just automatically built in that we're gonna run this, and if the defense has so many guys on the outside, then we're gonna run the ball inside. If they want to try to take away our run, then we're gonna throw it outside and let our talented athletes on the perimeter make plays. So I think that's something that you're seeing more teams start to evolve with, and I think it's something within the college game that makes it a lot more interesting to watch.
And I think building on that, like you said about the Nick Saban role, I think that's something that a lot of the NFL coaches, I think I've seen it at UCLA. I know Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, when you have the corners up, a lot of college schemes don't have that. So Florida guys, they couldn't get down the field on Michigan. And whenever they did, they were in one-on-one coverage. They could have some success. They just didn't go back to it, which baffled me. And then Tennessee plays a softer coverage. And then you watched at the end of the game, they have dudes running free and single coverage down it. And Florida's able to beat them deep in looked more like a post route than it did a Hail Mary, as the guy just catches the ball right in front of the defender.
Champions.
Yeah, life champions. I know my brother's a Tennessee fan, so I'll give him a shout out. I sent him the hashtag life champions, and I told him to get on that, and he just responded to me with a simple line, fire Butch. So I'll end the show on that. But we went a little bit longer. We had some technical difficulties. Again, I'll let everyone know if we get a little bit better space, and that will help us expand the show, make it a little bit better for you. But for the audio only guys, feel free, if you don't agree with our takes, we're getting a little bit heavy into football knowledge, football terminology, let us know. You can call our voicemail, leave us a voicemail at 412-330-1512. Call us, give us some hot takes. We're looking for them. Follow us on Periscope. I know Jeff was trying to get out some tailgate videos. We're going to try to do some more of those. So check those out, some cool stuff. And we will see you guys next week.